Hey, how you doing? We have got Michelle Ayers, we've got the wonderful Allison Hagendorf, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. I usually have a bit of trouble with names, but Allison, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a perfect pronunciation. And when your last name is Hagendorf, you're sort of used to every single interpretation there is, and you did a great job, Charles. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And having you here is quite a wonderful thing considering the busy schedule that you have. You're a music journalist, you're somebody who's also running a podcast with your daily show, and you've got several things that you have going on. How do you make time for interviews like these, and how do you still manage to retain a degree of sanity while having all these things that you're doing?
That's a very good question. I'm actually asking myself the same thing. Um, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I've sort of always been that way, where I kind of thrive with having a lot on my plate. I've always been that way, even in high school. I had every single activity, and I like doing it. And I think when you love what you do, it feels less like work. But yeah, I mean, the Allison Hagendorf show, I launched it a couple weeks ago, so it's full steam ahead, and really proud of the guests I've been having on. We have Willow on this past Friday, and then Cheryl Crow the week before. So it really shows you the interesting spectrum of guests, and the show is really just about a love and a celebration of music and the rock and roll spirit. So it's mostly musicians, but it's also actors and athletes, just really just music fans, which is what I am first and foremost. And I feel like we all, no matter what your job is, everyone is a lover of music in some way. But yeah, always try to balance it in, trying to get my workouts in. I have two little boys, so try to be a good mom and spend time with my family and my husband. So, I mean, look, this morning I was up before the boys even woke up just so I can have some coffee and some quiet before the storm. So, just getting it all in.
Wow, you're a mom on top of all of that. That is that is
Wow.
fantastic. You're truly some form of a superhuman. But speaking of music, as you were just a second ago, my co-host is a music legend in her own right, Michelle Ayers, and I'm sure Michelle has a number of things she would want to also ask you.
Aw.
Well, one, I did ask how she looked so fabulous after just
Aw.
having a child and having one at her age. That is amazing. You don't look a day over 30. You
Oh,
look
you are too
amazing.
kind, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
I
And of
think it's
course,
also a mindset, right? You got to keep yourself young, and honestly, I think music keeps me young. I think the fact that I always care about what's coming out, what's next, like what's happening. I honestly do think that keeps you young because it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you in tune, with what the younger generation is liking and what's reacting. And of course, running around after two little boys also keeps you young and exhausted. But yeah.
that's absolutely amazing. So tell me, how did you get into doing music?
I grew up wanting to be a VJ on MTV. I'm from the MTV generation, and I always thought it was cool to sort of be the liaison between the artists and the fans. And by the time I was of age to do it, MTV sadly wasn't doing music anymore. Um, but I did become the main host on Fuse, and Fuse was sort of the
Wow.
only channel that was doing music at the time. So I hosted the top 20 countdown and did all the festival coverage for them. And that's where I got my TV chops. And then when all the music shows were coming up, I hosted the one on the CW that was called The Next. And that was with Gloria Estefan, Joe Jonas, Nelly, and John
I
Rich.
remember that.
Yeah, and I'm
That
a
was
New
an
Yorker, but
amazing
I
show.
moved to LA for that show. And it was
Yes.
an incredible experience. And, just always in music. And then Spotify had approached me about coming in as the head of rock. I love all genres, but I would say rock and alternative is my forte, and so I was at Spotify for 6 years, and that's where I launched my show during the pandemic with celebrity guests, and kind of inspired me to start the Allison Hagendorf Show.
That's amazing.
Mm.
That is amazing. And we are definitely music lovers and definitely a fan of fitness, even though I'm not quite fit yet. However, I'm a fan of
You're
it.
on your way. You're on your way, just one day at a time, you know?
Yes, I need you there to coach me.
And you spoke a bit about how you were the global head of rock for Spotify, and I'm sure that position was quite an enthralling one and probably very demanding. How did you adjust from having such a role before the pandemic to then transitioning to having your own show during the pandemic? And was it something that required more of an adjustment period, or it's something where you were just able to transition seamlessly from what you were doing to now focusing on a show during the pandemic?
I think because I've been now in the music industry for over 20 years and I've been interviewing artists for 20 years, which is really crazy to wrap my head around. I got my start actually working at record labels in New York, at Sony, at Columbia and Epic. I did A&R. So I scouted talent and made records. And I think having that background and understanding how music is made and records are made and scouting unsigned talent, my role at Spotify was really rewarding because instead of just helping the handful of artists I had signed or worked with at the labels, I was able to help thousands and thousands of artists worldwide, by putting them on a playlist or giving them guidance or giving them their first like stamp of approval, like their first cosign or whatever. So it was a very rewarding position. And while I was doing that and starting the show, that was a lot, but it was just sort of focusing on all the strengths I had built up until that point, which was interviewing artists and, finding unsigned talent or undiscovered talent. So I was doing that at Spotify, but what I was really meant to do always was do my show and to sit down with artists and hear their stories and share their stories. So it was seamless in the fact that it was just I was meant to do that. I felt like every role I had held up until this point brought me to this moment with this show where I can sit down with these artists and hear their stories.
Wow, that's that's straight out of a movie. So everything culminated in that. And what I'm getting from what you're
Yeah.
saying is you got a lot of fulfillment when you transitioned into what you're doing now. And it allowed you to have more of that personable interaction you wanted to have with the artist all along, where you're getting their story, where you're able to understand more of their thoughts behind how they probably had a career which has risen or which has plummeted, whichever the case, but you're able to have that conversation with them beyond just having been an A&R or a music journalist. Now you're really able to get into the nitty gritty. And that is quite something that I resonate with myself. I think that's also why I enjoy interviewing creatives such as yourself.
Yes.
And, one of the questions that I would have regarding this is the subject of fulfillment. How have you been able to then tell yourself that I'm going to focus on this because I believe it's going to be more fulfilling, despite all the other opportunities you may have, and maybe even despite all the other advice that you might be getting from people who might say, "Oh, Allison, focus on this, do this." How do you put yourself first and focus on what fulfills you?
That's an incredible question, by the way, Charles. Thank you. And a difficult one, but a very good question. I think that, just because you can do a lot of things or different things doesn't mean you should do them, right? So it's like if you were to like close your eyes and think about just for taking your head out of it, what would excite you? What would bring you so much happiness to do? For me, it is sitting down with artists and hearing how they got to where they are, what their dreams were, what inspired them, what drives them, what ignites them, and to be able to provide that platform to share their story with fans and to in turn inspire and ignite their fans. So it's just really about connecting humans and to do it through music. That's my thing. And that's who I am. Music is really my religion. I was just sort of born that way. Music has always spoken to me. Um, and to be able to facilitate that and connect artists with their fans through music and their stories about music is everything.
Mm. Michelle, what are your thoughts about that? I know she's just loving this because she's such a music purist herself, down to the bone. She also sees music as a religion. But Michelle, I'm
Mhm.
wondering, what are your thoughts about what Allison is saying really about how she wants to always get back to the musicians and be able to really have their story and put them on a platform where they're able to really feel comfortable to share everything, the ins and
Mm.
outs, how their careers unfolded. What does that make you feel, Michelle, as
I
an
would have to
artist?
say, Allison could not have said that any better. That
Oh,
Mm,
is my heart, especially the babies. When we've been out
oh,
here doing it and we're learning and we know some shortcuts, well, now wait a minute, they also help us too because they keep
yeah.
us on the cutting edge of technology. They're innovative and they're super talented and explosive. So the combination together is just awesome. And those, when you have wisdom and you can share and you can say something or give them something and watch them grow, that means the world to me. So, Allison, you
Oh,
could not have said that any better. That's definitely my heart. You just got my heart,
oh. That's
girl.
beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think another reason why I love to interview artists also is because it's really when we love these musicians or these artists or these actors or whomever, these celebrities, we tend to put them on a pedestal and to think that they're superhuman. And in these I don't even like to call them interviews, really more just conversations. I like to humanize them. They're just people, and I love to hear their stories of hardship, of vulnerability, of, insecurity, because I think that really speaks volumes to their fans. No, they're just people too, and I think that that in itself is very inspiring.
mm. What you're saying right there, I can resonate with that too. I've had
Yes.
experiences where prior to interviewing somebody whom I would have perceived as larger than life, I would have thought, well, this person really isn't a person. I just see them as this, big celebrity figure. I just associate them with more with their moniker than with them as a person.
Right.
When you have the interview with them, you're almost at a loss for words when you realize just how normal they are as well, how much they just want to tell their everyday story. They may be big, they may be well known, but then at the very core, they're still humans. And that is something that I completely resonate with what you're saying right there. But speaking of that, have you, and during the course of your career, ever had a situation where you were nervous for a specific interview because you were a fan, or maybe you were somehow intimidated by the person? I don't
Oh, for sure. I mean, so many people I've been like little star. I'm actually not a starstruck person. I don't care about celebrity for being celebrity at all. But certain people who I revere, like Chris Cornell, for example, like sitting down with him or being at Bonnaroo and finding out I was going to interview Eminem, like last minute, like that's pretty exciting. And of course, again, I'm first and foremost a music fan. So of course you're going to have that excitement of like, oh, you're going to sit down with
Oh,
one
yeah.
of the greats. So but then again, I kind of like check myself and be like, this is just a human being, and we're gonna talk to them about what they want to share and explore. But yeah, it's definitely cool in those experiences that you get to meet your heroes and to connect with them in such an intimate way.
know. Mm. Michelle, what are your thoughts about that? Have you gotten starstruck? She says she doesn't, Allison doesn't get starstruck. Uh, to an extent, I could say it's the same thing for me, but I've definitely had moments where I've been taken aback by, the entire interview situation where it's not that I'm at a loss for words, but I'm just not entirely sure where I move from there because the person is completely different to what I'd have thought about. If anything, I'd have built them up to be on this pedestal. Then when I have the interview with them, I'm just like, oh, you're like the rest of us. Then now I have to
Yes.
adjust to make it a little bit more personable and everything. But then, Michelle, if you got in starstruck, you've been in the music industry for what seems like ages
Yes, and from a child, I had someone like Dionne Warwick coming to my elementary school when I was just in second grade,
Oh my
speaking
God.
life. And so I came from East Orange, New Jersey, and I was surrounded by a lot of celebrities, and they were all down to earth. I'm talking about
Aw.
legendary people like John Amos. I mean, really, really, really famous people, including the gang, and they were all down to earth. So I guess I probably would have been a little starstruck, maybe I would have, but being surrounded by it and you realize that they are real people and the most
Yeah.
of them being very loving, caring, and wanting to give back to the community, it made me
Oh,
view them in a different way. But yes, I'm still stunned by their talent. Now I am.
yes.
That knocks me off my feet every time.
Yes.
But not so much in a starstruck way, but just in a
Yeah.
respect, in a way that I
Respect.
respect their talent and what they're about. Absolutely.
I hear that for sure. I'm glad to hear that though about them. They were still gracious and grounded because it's unfortunate when you hear stories of someone you really, admire and then you hear that they're not so nice and you're like, "Ah, it's a bummer." Yeah.
Yeah, you're being very kind with your words there. I think if we're to be flat out honest, some of them are jerks, and I've been in a position where I've met people where they're quite famous. I'll say they're quite notable, and they have this pride that they have, this ego, but it's in the minority. I won't say that's been typically
Yeah.
my experience, but then you will eventually encounter some of those individuals where they're a little bit prideful, a little bit egotistical, but it then makes you just appreciate the ones who are not. And
Exactly.
that's been probably my the majority of my experience. Wherever I interview, they tend to be quite humble, but then there are those few
Yeah.
in between. Which brings me to my next question. Have you had an interview which has been, well, a forgettable experience? You don't have to be specific, obviously, with the names, but have you had that experience where you've thought, yeah, I wouldn't interview this person again? Yeah. Have you had that experience?
I'm trying to, to be honest with you, I'm being honest. I'm really trying to think about it. I haven't. I haven't had a
Oh.
negative experience. I think most of my experiences, I'm actually even shocked by how wonderful the person is. Like you think the person's going to be, professional, show up and just kind of go through it. But I've had really great experiences. I mean, I will tell you that Willow blew me away. I mean, and she's just my most recent interview, so I'm bringing her up again, but she absolutely blew me away with how intelligent, articulate, gracious, grounded,
Yes.
a beautiful person. Um, I love her music. I love, love, love her music. Her latest album, Coping Mechanism, is so awesome. It's one of my new favorite albums. And she's a superstar, but most importantly, a big heart and just very well read. She wowed me. I have took like book recommendations from her. I mean, she gives me so much hope, for the next generation because I found her to be an absolute inspiration and delight.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
She's what you call an old soul. Those people where
She's an
they're
old
young,
soul,
but they're
old
just,
soul.
yeah, exactly. She's
She is.
very kind. I can relate to what you're saying. I haven't had an experience of meeting her myself, but from what I've
She's
seen of
amazing.
her, I'm really really impressed by her demeanor and just how much she cares about people. But then again, that's testament to
Exactly.
how she was raised. I'd also say some credit should be given there. Speaking of which, Allison, when you are interviewing these celebrities, you highlighted how you want their story to get out there. Do you sometimes feel somewhat of a responsibility, at least with some of those guests of yours who might have controversial background? Do you feel a responsibility to showcase perhaps their more positive side? Because in mainstream media, there is a tendency to demonize people or to only highlight their weak points. Do you feel a responsibility to paint that picture of them where you're also showcasing what they do well, what they do right? I don't know. It's just a question that I'm throwing up there because I do.
Charles,
I
that's totally my MO. That is my entire MO. I can't stand the toxicity of a
uh,
lot of things that are out there with social media and negative press. And my entire MO is to create a safe space, for our interview and conversation to share this person's perspective and their side of the story. That's literally what I love to do. so we can hear it. Because in anything you hear, there's multiple vantage points that are not being shared simultaneously. So I like to hear it right from the source, right from the person, and let them tell the story as it and what their truth is, and how it should be told. So that's exactly my purpose.
Hmm. Wow. I love that. And there's always that temptation, I'm sure, for people who are in your position to try and get those nice sound bites by asking questions which they don't know will create whether it's good thumbnails or good headlines. But then I'm happy to know that somebody in your position is actually looking out for the best interests of the guests. And to an extent, that's exactly the way that I feel when I tend to interview people. I just want to really get their story. And if
Yes.
possible, I would want to highlight the positives of that person because even though that sometimes does not sell the best, I think it's more genuine. And at the end of the day, it would do more people out there who are viewing it a service because when you target the negatives associated with the person, and all of us have negatives, right? If we dig
Of
up
course.
enough, you find maybe
Yeah.
something that's very wrong about you. But if we dig up all the negatives, I think that we're doing a disservice to the audience because then how are they able to get something that's motivational for them? Unless it's a case where you're highlighting how somebody's past changed maybe from negatives to positives. But again, like you were saying just a moment ago, there's a tendency in the media to look for the negative, and that's what sells. Bad
Exactly.
news always travels faster.
Yeah, and it's not my thing. I think in a world where there's a lot of darkness, I try to be a light, and I think that people really appreciate authenticity and respect and celebration of positive things and the truth. So that's where my perspective is when it comes to interviewing.
Hmm. Michelle, have you been on the receiving end of negative press ever in your life?
Not really. Not really. Never experienced that too much. I've been on the negative end of some private gossip. Not too much highlighted stuff, thank God. But you never know. The bigger you get, hey, you're definitely in the bullseye area for that to happen to you
Mhm.
for sure.
Mm, yeah, and what you're saying there, Michelle, is very true. The bigger you get, the more of a target there is, really. There's more to look at, and more people are actually looking in your direction. So it's an occupational hazard when you do get big. Eventually, somebody will
Yeah.
discover something about you. And listen, if you've been on the receiving end of any type of negative press or somebody just coming at you the wrong way, even if it's off the cameras and not in the limelight, have you been on the receiving end of any type of negativity that has, kind of
Well, I
unnerved
don't
you?
Yeah, not negative press per se, but just being on social media. I'm always still just so I get very, disillusioned by just how much negativity there is just on
Oh
comments
God.
from people, just because I'm not like that at all. So I can't relate to someone just blindly attacking something. I cannot relate to it. Just sort of the bullying aspect of it. So I always just try to kill with kindness and do like an outflow of love. So if I try not to look at too many comments from my social media, but if I'm having to go through and catch something negative, I oftentimes address it and with something positive, just to
Yeah.
sort of like flip it around. And I will tell you, a lot of times it turns the person. I think when people do these negative comments, for the most part, they don't think anyone's reading it, or maybe it gives them some sort of like release, some vicarious release of projection, what's going on in their own lives. But I think if they know it's been like received by the person and it's been received with positivity, it's interesting how it turns around. And that's a simple, and that's in real life too. If you, let's say you're at checking out at a Target and the cashier looks like not happy, and you greet the person and say hello with a smile, how are you today? Isn't it amazing how quickly they have a smile on their face, and you could feel the warmth. So I just feel like in everything I do, whether it's interviewing an artist or online or at Target, whatever it is, just trying to spread a little positivity, just a little warmth and a little bit of light, because that's something that we can never have enough of.
Mm. And I would say your positivity personified. This is not just lip service. I would say even prior to having this interview with you, just the conversation we're able to have, I could tell that you're such an amazing person. It's
Oh,
palpable. You can almost
oh,
reach out and touch it. That
Definitely.
positivity is very infectious, and I think that's something which I hope more of the world will be like you. If we can have more
oh.
Allison Hagendorf, I think we'll be in a better place. So
Thank
that's
you,
something which I'll
Charles.
say kudos to you. I really
Oh,
appreciate the
that's
way that
beautiful.
you are, and it's more so in the industry that you're in because
Oh,
being
yes.
in a similar industry myself and Michelle, the same thing. That industry can wear on you a bit, and at
Oh,
times
yes.
it might make you change the way that you are, change your perception towards people. But I'm happy that it hasn't changed you. And I'll say Michelle's very much the same way. Like you alluded to earlier, she's very much a sweetheart. Michelle, how have you been able
Yes.
to do that? You stay nice, even to me.
Yes,
When
I
I
like
piss
to
you off at
lead.
times, you're still nice.
No. I love leading with love, and I feel that from
Yes.
Allison definitely. You too, Charles. He has a lot of patience to put up with me at times too. Because the other side, when it's time to get work done, I could be a stickler. You know what I mean? However, I do like to lead. He's laughing. You see that? I do like to lead with love.
I
I
love
do.
that.
Yes, I absolutely do. And I think it makes the world a better place. And you, Allison, you are definitely a bow of light and patient
Oh.
to put up with us. Absolutely.
No worries. No worries. I like that. Leading with love. I like that so
Yes,
much. Leading with love.
Mhm.
absolutely.
This then creates a perfect segue to what I really wanted to get to know, more of the personal stuff. I'll actually start with a personal story of mine. Part of the reason I ended up wanting to love people more is because of what I had to go through as a child. I realized that life is very finite. We are not guaranteed a tomorrow. When I was 12 years of age, I lost my mother. When I was 13 years of age, my father passed away. By the time I was 15, the very last of my grandparents also passed away. So I was an orphan in every sense of the word. And
Wow.
it just taught me that life is short and we need to appreciate when we're here. We need to love people as much as we can because you're not going to get the chance to love those people when they're gone. So I then had that perspective on life, a new perspective, even though it was a very dark time in my life. I think having gone through that has helped me be a better person because I understand just how valuable life is and how important it is to be kind to people and give them their flowers while they're still on this earth. I do not know if maybe Alison, you've had some form of not grief per se, but certain things that you've gone through in your life which have been negative, but then you've ended up using them as positives.
Yeah, well, I think that, and thank you for sharing that, Charles, that I can't even imagine how difficult that must have been. Wow. I will say I've been very, very grateful, because and fortunate because I have a very close-knit family, and my parents are just such kind, giving people. So they sort of showed by example since as early as I can remember, just being very kind to everyone, every person, regardless of who they are, what they do and don't do, just very kind. So I think it just sort of got into my mind early on just to be a lover of people. Um, but as far as like what you were saying with the music business, and it's really challenging. And I think what's changed for me is that I used to start everyone at 100%. I I thought that everyone was going to be very kind and giving, how my parents are, how my sisters are, how I am. But of course, I learned that that is unfortunately not the case. Um,
Mhm.
but I do give everyone a chance. I do try to be as open-minded as possible and not listen to what you hear about people and let them show you who they are. And but the good thing about it is that when you do find the good ones, the real ones, you hold them close. And
Mm,
I'm a very, very loyal, loving person. And when you find the good ones and the ones who have done good by you, I hold them very dear. And I'm a I'm a good friend. I'm a good friend.
mm. I love that. Let people show you who they are. Don't jump to
Yeah,
conclusions. I love that. I've been
exactly.
guilty of the opposite.
That's so good.
I hear something about someone, I'm like, I'm gonna have my eye on them. But then, with time, I think it also comes with maturing. It's indicative of
Yeah.
just how mature or cultured you are to know that you shouldn't always, judge people, and giving people the benefit of the doubt is always a good thing to do. But
Yeah.
like you say, more often than not in the music industry, you have one or two people who make you a little bit tentative to do that. But that's the thing in life, you're gonna have people who are good, they meet your expectations, and some people who are underwhelming in terms of your expectations. But that's that's just how life is. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, someone like you who says you're very positive, you should never change the way that you're positive just because of a few, outliers.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But
And I have a lot of empathy and compassion, so it's like you never know what someone's going through. You never know what someone's story is. So I always take it with a grain of salt.
mm, and as we're going to be capping off this, wonderful discussion, I wanted to get a sense of, you spoke about how your family was really important in terms of nurturing you to be the kind person that you are and everything. I wanted to ask how life has been for you managing being a mother as well as such a busy career. Has there been some kind of a trade-off if you have to take a little bit out of your career in order to invest more of yourself into the kids, or it's been something where you've been able to find the right balance?
I've definitely been able to find a balance. I will be the first one to admit that it's very challenging and it is not easy. Even
Yes.
if people make it look easy, if it looks easy on Instagram, it is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. It's for anyone who's in that situation. It's very difficult. But I think when you're such a passionate, driven person, I've given 100 billion% to my career my entire life. um, it's just very difficult to your priorities shift. So it's like I'm a mother now. I have two little boys, 8 months and 3, and I'm committed to being the best mother on the planet. So I think it's not there's not like I didn't sacrifice my career. Your priorities change, so your choices change. That's all. So you pick and choose. You're more selective. I literally used to go see music like 7 nights a week. That is not happening anymore. So it's also not necessary. I just was, very focused on seeing live music and meeting people, out and stuff. So it's just not necessary. So I just don't do that as much anymore. But I pick and choose. I'm more selective, and I just, I prioritize my family and health and my career and sort of find a balance. It is difficult.
Mhm. Michelle over here is actually a grandparent. I know she doesn't book it,
That's
but
unbelievable. Michelle, you are the fountain of youth. You're ageless and
Oh,
beautiful, and that's incredible.
thank you
I
so
know
much,
I'm
Allison.
so jealous of that.
I
I'm
don't
so
feel like
jealous,
it
Michelle.
but
all the
yeah.
time. That's for sure. Yes.
But
Thank
she
you
has
so much,
similar experiences
Allison.
to yours. She's had to balance what has been a very demanding career, and she's
Yes.
not just a musician; she's an entrepreneur. She's a jack of all trades, similar to you, Alison,
Yeah.
and she has also had to balance that with having her own children and having
Yes.
grandkids. So
I
I'm
can't
quite
believe that.
interested to hear from you, Michelle. Do you share some of the same experiences as Alison if you had to give up certain things like maybe music 7 nights a week?
I used Allison. I'm telling you, I used to hang out seven
Yeah.
nights a week. for real.
Exactly.
I love
You
music
know.
just that much, and I love dancing just as much. So
Yeah,
I definitely, anybody that knew me back in the day, they can find me on the dance floor or somewhere
I
on the
love it.
stage in my spare time, not just performing. I'm saying when I'm just hanging out, hanging out. Yes, absolutely, seven
Yeah.
days a week. And of course, I can't do that anymore. I stopped that a long time ago, but I still get out there every now and again.
Yeah. You just got to
Make sure
make
I,
it count, right, Michelle? You
yeah,
just got to make it count. It's got to be something you're dying to
absolutely.
see, dying to do,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Allison.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So, any last questions from you, Michelle, for Allison? And Allison, the floor's open. You could ask her some questions as well, as we're capping it off.
I got one question. I know she's
Mm.
like into music fabulously, but those abs, you must have, how in the world that you talk about a scrub board? This woman,
Oh,
amazing. She is
thank
like
you.
Miss
Oh.
America. Okay, that body. Oh, I probably wasn't. I probably will never get that, but I sure wish I could. How did
First of
you
all,
do
thank you
it,
so much.
Allison?
I would say my abs do not look like that right now, but
I bet you they're close.
I was very focused at the time, I was doing CrossFit like 5 days a week, I was
Mm.
pretty focused on diet and I was doing fitness modeling, so I had that extra incentive to kind of to keep on it, but I mean that was it was a great time though. Like I really felt bionic. I mean it was only a couple years ago. Let me just but I have had two babies and a pandemic since. But um, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, the abs part, that's like a whole, it was like the consistent fitness with the diet, and it was a whole mindset. It was fun.
Mm.
But now
Wow.
I love to bake, and I love my baking too much now. So,
Well, you still look great, Allison. You
oh, thank
really do.
you.
And I don't doubt that those abs are not far from that. You still listen.
Thank
I
you.
had a two pack one time. I don't know about an eight pack. I had a two pack one
Too
time.
bad. Okay. So good. You're
Yeah,
the best,
Michelle,
Michelle.
funny enough, I'm starting to wonder if Allison really is a human being or some
I'm
kind of
telling
robot
you.
because she bakes, you say, and then she's also got abs. What's going on here?
Wow. And a baby. She don't look like she ever had a child.
Oh,
Look at
thank
that.
you.
A baby
Oh
in
my
her
God.
40s. That's amazing
You guys.
alone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Mm.
for understanding, Michelle. You rock. You rock.
Yes.
Oh, you guys are the loveliest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It has its days. But then,
Yes.
Alison, as I previously alluded to, the floor is open. If you have any questions for us as we cap it off, we just like to switch it up a little bit. If you have just one or two things you'd want to ask us.
um, let's see. Tell me who your favorite artist is of all time.
Oof.
It's
Yeah,
like an impossible question.
Michelle will kill me if I don't say it's her. So,
Boy.
um,
All right, how about you can do top three? You can do top three if you want.
there are quite a
Ooh.
number. I think I would have to. You mentioned Eminem. He's one of the people where I'd have him top just simply because he, in my opinion at least, and this could be a controversial one. I think he's the greatest rapper of all time, at least just from a lyrical standpoint. So I'd say I'd have to have Eminem up there. I'd probably have to have a good friend of mine. I'll probably have to have Tammy Moyer there, who's a Zimbabwean artist. So I'll put her over there. And then possibly, yeah, I'd have to say Michelle Ayers. Like I said, if I don't,
Oh, that's so
Thank you.
sweet,
Oh God, Charles. Now you
Michelle.
know I don't fit up there, but thank you.
Aw.
Ooh. Thank you, Charles.
mm,
Allison, you're gonna get me in trouble. I don't know how you do it. I have so many.
I
And
know,
I'm
it's
like
really
you.
hard.
It is and I like all
Yeah.
genres. I love all genres.
Mhm.
I love all music. So I don't even know I'm gonna
Yeah.
get in trouble. But I gotta say that I gotta go back to Michael Jackson is one of my favorites. And because he understood multiple genres and he mastered all of them. How did he do that?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Oh
Mm.
God, I'm gonna get in trouble. I can't even, I have so many in my head. I don't even know how to say.
They're
Oh,
going
It's
to be calling you
impossible.
after this, and you left me
oh
out
my
of
God,
this.
I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble. I gotta say, some people are gonna get upset with this, but I don't know why they would, but I would have to put Beyonce in there. The reason why
Mhm.
is because I think she is so deeply into her craft
Yeah.
that
Mm.
it's like
Yes.
crazy. It's like crazy.
The
And
showmanship alone. I mean, she's
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And I have so many, I would have to say, I love Adele.
Yeah.
I love how
Amazing.
she can just be her. She don't even have to sweat.
Yeah.
I love her. Now I can name about 500 more people now,
No,
okay?
I know. It's impossible. It's
You
But
can.
impossible.
I'm telling you, but Adele is something about her. It's like she does it effortlessly without breaking a
Uh,
sweat. She is absolutely amazing to me.
And
So
she's so funny. She's so funny.
yes,
If
I
you ever
love.
see her a live show, she's hilarious.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
her. I love her, and I have so many. So don't get mad at me, guys. I love all y'all. That's it for me for now.
Yeah. Good picks. Good picks.
but yeah, Allison, thank you very much for your time. We're not really going to keep you much longer, but whenever we're having a discussion with someone like you, it's so difficult to then cut it off because it's so enjoyable. You want it to go on and on and on.
Oh,
So it's just testament to what I said about you earlier. You're truly an amazing person in every sense of the
no.
word, and I hope that you continue to elevate in your career. You've done so much already, but I'm sure there's
Yes.
even more to come, bigger things to come. So I'll be excited to see that. And you
Oh.
have the last word, Allison.
I just want to say thank you for connecting with me and for this beautiful conversation. Both of you are such beautiful beings, and Michelle and I got to hang 'cause I hopped on early, so I can feel your light, Michelle, and Charles. You're awesome, and thank you. I'm very grateful.
Right. Cheers.
As an artist, we should reflect the time.
Why you so talented?
Cause I'm black.
Why you so amazing?
Cause I'm black.
It's really important that we build characters so that people understand their story matters.
2 Chainz and I both are just really into good food.
And when you know you are royalty, you will only aim in life to be royalty.
We're doing it right now. I don't give a damn what they say about me. Yes, I called your ass out. I know I shouldn't be saying this kind of.
Shout out to Hype Magazine Network.
Shout out to the Hype Magazine Network.